Welcome, everyone, to the 25th anniversary edition of the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival. We remind ourselves that we are running this festival as climate catastrophes multiply and intensify, when over 6 million people worldwide have died from COVID, and when people of Ukraine are fighting the brutal Russian invasion. For all of us at FLEF, the world is our why. I'm Anne Michelle, producer of the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival. Major sponsors for FLEF include the Park Foundation, Ithaca College, and the Park Center for Independent Media. Our festival theme this year is entanglements, a concept that explores how different environments, ideas, imaginatives, places, politics, practices, registers, and species twist into each other and enmesh. We are all very honored that you have joined us today for this very special session, Reclaiming Lost Film Histories. Before we begin, we kindly ask you to rename yourself with your physical location after your name. It's really nice to know where people are, and sometimes it's really spans the globe, and this way we can pretend that we're somewhere on the planet besides where we are. And now it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to today's moderator, Scott MacDonald, film scholar and author and editor of many books, including most recently, William Greaves, Filmmaking as a Mission.
Hello, folks. I'm not sure who all might be watching this. I'm sure there will be people here who know Su Friedrich's films, but there'll also be people here that are interested in the website itself, edited by, knowing it's a website about women editors through the history of cinema. But I wanted to give just a little background on Su's filmmaking, because at least for me, as a person who's been following her career for, I can't believe I'm saying this number, 40 years, I see the edited by website as a kind of culmination. It won't be the only culmination, I'm sure, but as a kind of culmination of a brilliant career that begins in the late 70s and early 80s. And I won't say a lot about it, but a couple of things strike me as useful to say in relation to the website. From the beginning, one of the things that Su's films were known for was very careful, precise, interesting editing. Her first longer film, The Ties That Bind, was a personal film in which she asks her mother questions. Her mother grew up in Nazi Germany as an anti-Nazi German. And it's a fascinating story, but the title, Ties That Bind, refers not only to her connections with her mother and to her background, but also to the way in which in that film, Su ties image and sound together in brilliant ways. From the opening moment of that film, you can see you're in the hands of a remarkable editor. And in other ways too, even the early films show Su's interest in editing. Damned If You Don't, for example, was one of the first films to mix modes. In independent film for a long time, you either made one or another kind of documentary, or you did one or another kind of avant-garde film. But Su's films, and Damned If You Don't in particular, mix narrative melodrama with interviewees talking about their crushes on their same-sex teachers, mixed with a run through of the movie Black Narcissus. I mean, it's a kind of collage of modes of filmmaking that most filmmakers, I think, would not have the nerve to try to put together into a single piece. And Su makes a brilliant film out of it. So in multiple ways, editing has always been a crucial part of Su's work. The other thing I think is important is that for a very long time, and I think it's still true, Su is thought of as a personal filmmaker. I mean, she works between the area, I'm not sure I like these terms anymore, but avant-garde experimental film and documentary. But her films have very often, mostly, been about struggles of her own, her personal life. And I see the Edited by website as a culmination of all of this. I mean, it's about editing itself, but it's also her own thinking about this dimension of her filmmaking that's been so important both to her and to those of us who know the films. So, Sue, I guess I would begin with the question. You hadn't really done a major website before starting Edited by, and I hesitate to imagine what 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month into it, you realized, oh my God, this is like a horrendous project to take on. So how long did it take you to decide, okay, I'm taking this on as a project?
Well, actually, I've made a bunch of websites before then, but different. That my partner, Kathy Quinlan, is a painter, made a website for her. She used to run sort of a temporary museum, she called it, in our old loft space. And I made a massive website for that. And also made my own, which is very old school now, that website. But that was some years back. So I hadn't done it for a long time. And I would say it took me about, I thought at first that I would do a PowerPoint presentation, because I read this book, a chapter of a book about editing by two friends of mine, very good, film people, and it was a production handbook, and I was going to give it to my students. And I'm reading the chapter about editing, about all the great editing that's been done, and it never mentioned the editor, it only mentioned the director. So in Hitchcock's North by Northwest, so I went through the entire chapter and annotated it. I looked up all the editors, and half of them were women. And I thought, well, I didn't know that. So then I thought, I have to do something about this. And I started doing the research, and we can talk more about that, but I started doing the research and wanted to do a presentation at school, just sort of a short thing for students and whatever. And I did it as a PowerPoint, and it was fine, but it was really clunky. But I still thought I was going to continue it. And then I was talking to a friend who's a filmmaker and also edits his own work. And he said, well, why don't you make it into a website? And it was kind of absurd that I hadn't thought of that, because a website is much more workable and accessible than a PowerPoint thing. And so he said that. I said, you're brilliant. I'm going to go do it. And then Kathy, my partner, said, well, why don't you see if Princeton will give you the support to do it? Because we had these other websites I had done on my own. And I thought, well, that's another brilliant idea. So I went to Princeton and asked them basically for tech support and also to be the server for it. And they agreed to that because they considered it an educational thing. And I was able to get really fantastic tech support from a guy named Surat Tungas. I can't pronounce his last name very well. Anyway, he's one of the tech people there. And so we talked about the general setup of it and about the navigation and all of that. And then he kind of put things in place. And then I sort of went from there. So that's how it got started. I didn't know how long it would take, but that's how it got started.
It's interesting you mentioned the educational aspect to it, because you've been a teacher for a very long time. And in some ways, it makes total sense to me. And I'm very grateful for it, actually. I think the website, it's better than a book. It's got so much information in it that anybody can access. You don't have to buy a book to access it.
Right.
And you can lose yourself in that website because it's immense. So I think in many ways, it's a kind of culmination of your teaching, both of your media making, but also of your teaching.
Yeah, because I had talked with people about doing a book, and then I thought, well, somebody in Sri Lanka isn't going to get a copy of it. If you make a website, anybody in the world can look at it. And so, and people have said since then, oh, it would be great if you did make a book about it. And I always say, well, then go ahead and do it. You can have all my information. I'm not going to do it. Because yes, it's true. Websites are a great tool. And but that also had to do with how I designed the website, which also has to do with my sense of how things are as an educator. Yeah.
There's so many parts to it. I mean, I've been looking at it over the past few weeks, knowing that we're going to do this talk, but I had looked at it before too. I have the sense that you may have started with an idea of doing one thing or two things, and then it kind of ran out of your control. Could you talk about the steps in the process?
Yeah. I started with learning that, Beate Meinke-Jellinghaus had edited 20 films by Werner Herzog, and Ulla Riga had done all of Bergman's film. Like these women who had done like the entire, almost all the films of all the canonical filmmakers we know. So I thought, okay, that's who I'm going to concentrate on, and so I started the research on them, and I have to say that it was really hard to find information. There are two books. Michael Crittenden is about European editors, both men and women. And then David Mule has a book about women editors. And he covers a lot of people. I mean, not as many as I do, but those were kind of starting places for actual information. But when I would go online, I would put in somebody's name, somebody I consider really famous. And there'd be nothing, on page 6 of Google, there'd be a little something. And so, so then I had to really start digging. And a lot of my focus at the beginning was about what I now call the main editors. So all the women whose job it is to edit, and whether documentary, feature, or fiction or whatever. And at some point I thought, well, hold on a minute, I'm an editor. And a lot of people I know are editors also of their own work, good friends of mine, they're really wonderful editors of their own films. And so then I decided I had to have a whole separate section called Filmmakers Who Always or Sometimes Edit, because sometimes they do their own and sometimes somebody edits for them. But these are basically women who have done some share of editing of their own work or all of it. And I didn't want to mix the two because I thought some of the issues and whatever about it were quite different. And so I have had these two sections, and I slowly built up the two separate sections. And because of the amount of work, I mean, there were three former students of mine, women students of mine, and a young woman who had just graduated from NYU. And I conscripted them to help me, find pictures and get more information, all of that. So all of us were working together to build it up. But it really was a tremendous amount of work. And so I decided, maybe unfairly, that the main women were going to get a full page, a picture of them, a blurb about their major, works, and then posters. And I'll go into that in a second. And the filmmakers who always sometimes edit are more of a grid. There are 6 on a page, but they're like 75 or 80 filmmakers represented, but they just get a picture and a name. But then then I have several appendices, and one of them is the index of all the editors. So when you go into that, if you want to see about Leslie Thornton's work or Jill Godmillow or you name it, of the filmmakers who edit, they do have links to articles about them or their websites or whatever. So their information about them is represented in the appendix, but not so much in the body of the website.
Yeah. My guess is everybody watching this will probably love looking at clips from films. And one of my favorite parts of the website is the, what do you call it? Edited
compilation.
Yeah, that's a fantastic compilation. At what point did you decide that would be part of the web? I mean, and on a certain level, it's so obvious that it would be a shame not to have it.
Right.
But to have a feature-length compilation film made up of sequences from these films, that's a real treat. And I mean, I look at it sometimes just when I can't find something better to look at,
Well, that actually, I decided to do that about 3 days before the launch party. So at Union Docks, which is this wonderful place in Brooklyn, we were going to have the launch party there. And I thought, wow, this is going to be really boring. I can't just stand up in front of all these people and show them pages of the website. I got to have a movie to show. And so I literally, like within 3 days, put this thing together. And then it was shorter because when I launched the site, it had something like 60 or 61 main editors and maybe the same number of filmmakers who edit. And then over the next year, I added more people. So there's the original one, the 60-minute one, and now there's like a 75 or however long it is, I can't remember one. And it was really fun to put it together because I'd been working, on all these pages and thinking about, oh yeah, she did Breathless, and she did, The Wizard of Oz, and she did, all of them. And so then I just pulled a 1-minute clip from one of the notable films that each of them had edited, and simply, it has a title card with the editor's name and the film title, and then you see this 1 minute. And to me, it's kind of fantastic because you also see the trajectory of film history. Right. You sort of start with this, John Ford, film from like 1924 or something, and you end with Moonlight, and everything in between. So I think it's really a great thing.
It's kind of sweet too. The first 2 films are from Russia, and you see Elzveta Svilova actually editing Man with a Movie Camera. And when you see that, you realize, I don't know if I've ever seen a woman editing before. You know what I mean? It's like in that early film, Vertov is very alert to it. So it's a beautiful place to start.
Yeah.
Is the film still?
And there's also, the other thing is that somebody sent me a GIF of Ludmila Faiganova sitting at the Steenbeck with Tarkovsky sitting in a chair, over in the corner, because she edited, has edited most of his films. And I never knew that existed, and somebody sent it to me. So that's in there. It's just fantastic to see.
Wow.
Her. Yeah.
Is the film still growing?
The film. Oh, the compilation.
Yeah. The film.
I keep getting emails from people saying, hey, did you know about so-and-so? And I write them back and I say, I'm kind of busy. I'll add it later. So I think at some point I will go back in and I might add some more main people pages. But there's also an Appendix D, and that's where there are lots of editors who, I don't mean to be a judge of, who's a great editor or what films are worth talking about that have been edited by these women. It's more a matter of exhaustion. And so as people started writing me and saying, oh, I've done such and such, then they get added to Appendix D. So there are lots of women in there who've, done really good films, but the main group is really like the people who've, edited 170 films and, that have that kind of career. Yeah. But that's the other thing about a website is you can keep adding to it.
Yeah, right. So how long have you worked on it? It's probably 2-3 years. How long has this project been going?
Well, yeah, I probably did. I did it within a year. I started it probably in the early spring, and our launch party was like in the next January. And then later that year, like in August, I thought I've got to add these new main women, Buñuel's editor. And so I worked on that for a couple of months. And since then, all I've done is add people to the Appendix D, not any main pages.
Yeah. Were there major frustrations in the process?
Yeah,
other than
finding out that nobody has ever written anything about any of these women, that there's no acknowledgement. And Karen Perlman, she's in the Filmmakers Who Edit part, and she's written a book about editing, and she's based in Australia. And we had a lot of exchanges about, various pieces of information and stuff. And she said that because of her own recognition of the role of editors, that she has changed, and she's also a scholar. And so she's changed the way that she does attribution. So when you're writing about a film, you say in North by Northwest, and then you would say parentheses, Hitchcock, 1949, or whatever it is, 1949. or 1949 Hitchcock. And from now she writes Hitchcock et al. Because she's like, there's so many more people who make a film than the director. And there's, it's this crazy idea that it's just the director. And the other thing that blew my mind is I had mentioned the posters. So when I'm doing the website, it's very clean and calm. It has a pale blue background. There are no links. Like when you're reading about somebody, it doesn't link to an article about them, right? Because I just wanted people to look at the picture of the person, read about what they've done, and then maybe later go to the index and start looking at all of the articles and whatever. But I thought, well, let's add a little color. And film posters, as we know from looking at yours behind you, are really great. And so I then on every page, I also have several film posters, which are really fun. And then because I had so many, I have, 100 editors and three. So now I've got one of the things in it, if you look in the table of contents, is the photo gallery. And it's fantastic. You just scroll through like, hundreds of beautiful movie posters. But when I was doing that, I was looking, one day I was looking at the fine print, the way, in a standard poster, it's all at the bottom and at first it says starring so-and-so, directed by, executive producer, blah, 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 blah. And it didn't say the editor. It said the composer and not the editor.
Yeah.
And I thought, how is that possible? And it usually would say the writer or would say screenplay by, right? How is it possible? The three pillars of we're talking, let's say narrative, obviously. Three pillars are the writer, the director, and the editor. The film does not get made without all three of those people. Fuck the composer, excuse my language. But, okay, yeah, music, it's fine. But how can it be that the composer has more weight than the editor? And I talked to people at ACE, American Cinema Editors, the union for editors, and she said, yeah, it drives us crazy. So yeah, I think I got off the track, but that's about the posters. And every time you look at one of those posters, imagine that the editor's name is on it.
Right, I'm just realizing if I turned my thing, you'd see two of your posters on the wall also. I should have set this up so that was visible. Maybe we should open it up for questions from people watching, listening to this. Patty, are there some people tuning in?
I can, oh, there is somebody, okay.
Lee Schaefer. Yes.
Hi, thanks. This is a really interesting conversation. I just wanted to ask you, this is probably a little flat-footed of a question, but can you talk a little bit about editing the compilation video as an editing project, and what way were you thinking about the editing process when you were editing together the editing?
I was thinking this has to be done in 3 days, and I'm going to do the simplest thing I can, which is to figure out a 1-minute section of, all about Eve, whatever the film would be, and get it in there and make sure the date of the film is right. It wasn't deep editing, I would say. It was, but it was in the sense that I wanted to find a good clip, not just any clip, but something that, like when we watch trailers or anything, you want to have that little bit really telescope a lot of information to the person watching it so they can get it within that 1 minute. So it was really like that, kind of done. And I replaced a few when I did the second compilation. But yeah, that was really it.
Do you have thoughts in general about compilation videos? I mean, I know when I have a video essay class and I always show students compilations and I'm like, this is not an essay, but I think maybe that's not entirely correct because there's something about the website and the compilation that have their own kind of structure and they have their own kind of language. So I'm wondering if you have thoughts about.
I'll be honest, I didn't really think about it that much. I felt like the job of doing that was very straightforward. I wasn't going to add any narration, and I was doing it chronological. I wasn't going to do it by theme or, somebody else could do something where it was thematic. or, you know, in terms of style of editing, or, you know, whatever it might be. But for me, it was like, start at the beginning, end at the end, and make sure they're, you know, all high resolution, and then like wrap it up and get to the launch party. And when I did the second one, it was the same thing. I already had the form of the first one, and I was just inserting people along the way. So I can't really contribute that much to the way of thinking about it. Yeah.
I have to say, Sue, sometimes you hit it right on the nose, because one of my favorite cuts in the whole history of cinema is when Lawrence of Arabia blows out the match, and you go straight cut to the rising sun, and then to that unbelievable sequence in the desert. It's always been, I mean, I show that to just talk about jump cuts and how much energy can be in a single cut. And there it is.
Yeah,
So,
it's fantastic. And apparently it was a little bit of an accident that it happened that way, she said. But yeah, but it's great. I mean, hence the term match cut. So yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I'm here in not to ask a question, but to invite onto the screen Sarah Corrigan, who is a feature film professional film editor. And Sarah, Annie, could you help get Sarah Corrigan on the screen? Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, how is everyone?
Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
I really appreciate this talk beyond measure, I have to tell you, because I feel like we're unseen people. I know our work is supposed to be unseen because it's good that way, but as crafts people, as women, we're just completely invisible, and I'm getting quite tired of it. But I did post something on there that's a male editor friend of mine who was nominated for Tick Tick Boom. You know, as you know, we were all cut out of the ceremony, and he actually showed the full video of the editors and all the craftspeople who were cut out of the ceremony. He has them posted to his Facebook page, but he also showed us a screenshot that I posted for everyone where the editors are, if you look at it, I don't know how to do it on here, but anyway.
Can somebody get that onto the screen somehow? How do we?
I have it up at the 1227 point where it says screenshot. I just thought it was interesting because, yeah, females editors are overlooked, but also male editors are overlooked as well.
Definitely.
And so if you want to see, that's interesting to see how they present us editors in the public eye.
Well, I don't know if somebody can put that up to see it, but thank you. And yes,
Sure.
It's true, because when I would talk to people about it, I would also say, you know, male editors also are relegated to, you know, the editing room. And if anybody knows about anybody, they might know about Walter Murch. And beyond that, what do they know? So I think, you know, I do feel like the website, at least for people who've gone to it, and I think a lot of people have, it has made them much more aware of the centrality of editing, and the fact that women were, you know, not given their due as much. Although then you have somebody like Dee Dee Allen, and she's one of the first people who got front screen credit. And the male editors at the time said, "Thank you so much, because we've been waiting for all of us to get that." And, you know, so she did it. I mean, along with all the other things that the women did. And one of the many things I discovered was that when film started being talkies, women had been editors a lot. And then the studios decided that when sound came in, it was just going to be a little too complicated for the women. How could they possibly deal with the technology? And of the 5 major Hollywood studios at the time, their first sound film was edited by a woman. So again, you know, this assumption of what we can't do, and then women are just like, leave me alone, I can do it. So yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing this. I'm always just getting angry. So thank you for putting together in words and writing so that I cannot be so angry anymore and just have, you know, the whole
You're
graph
welcome.
should be noticed. So
or you can know that you have a lot of people, you have a lot of company in feeling angry about it, because it's, you know, it's a big problem.
And I saw that women were editors because we knew how to knit and crochet.
Yeah. You have dainty little hands to do dainty little work.
Exactly.
So annoying.
Anyway, so thanks.
So
I find that my students have a very hard time thinking about editing, actually.
Uh-huh.
I mean, shower scene in Psycho, yeah, okay. But I struggle to get them to think about it. And I will never not teach my intro course again without having them see the companion film, just because you see how many different things editing actually is in a film. It's right there in front of you. And there's also this weird kind of pleasure where you have the clips just long enough for us to get into them.
And then you really want to see the whole movie.
Boom.
Yes.
Wait a minute, I'm into this movie.
Oh, I know, one after the other, like, I gotta watch that again. I gotta watch that again. I know. Yeah, I mean, I teach this film seminar, and it's supposed to be mostly about editing, because they've shot their projects in the fall. They're, editing them in the spring. So every week they have to watch some film, narrative or documentary, feature film, and then write a paper about the editing in it, a 1 to 2 page paper. It is so hard for them to understand the concept, because they want to just tell me the story. I'm like, no, look at 1 minute of it and tell me why those shots are in the order they are and what that does. And eventually they get it. And I had a really great example. I have a fantastic student. She got it from the beginning. Fantastic student. And they watched High and Low, Kurosawa film, great film. And so she writes this paper, and it's about, this scene when they're in the living room and the detectives are there. And she describes how there's one shot, guy sitting on the couch, and then he stands up to, walk across the room, whatever. And the camera angle changes, and it's a bit of a mismatch. I thought, I'll be goddamn, you found an editing mistake in a Kurosawa film, because he did his own editing. So I think if you watch a film closely, you see the greatness of how the story is built through the editing. And then you might also notice where, there are mistakes are being made, but it's so that you really have a sense of that's how the story has been constructed by this person. Sometimes with the director kind of on hand, and a lot of times the director's like, do your job, I'll say if it's okay later. So that person, man or woman, sitting in the editing room is looking at 37 takes of one person's reaction and whatever it might be, and just making the film work or not work. And yeah.
When Chuck Workman did Precious Images, which was sort of one of the first Hollywood compilation pieces that got noticed, all he had to do, this is in the late 80s, I think, he had to make 3 phone calls to get the rights to use the material, because nobody thought clips from earlier films were of any value whatsoever. I mean, it's hard to imagine that now, but and then in the wake of that, all of a sudden rights issues were, just sort of went crazy. Was this something you worried about, or are your clips within?
It's for an educational purpose.
Yeah.
So I worried, and then somebody pointed out that we were sort of protected by the educational thing. And beyond that, I thought, if somebody complains later, whatever, I'm going to go ahead. So that was a good aspect to being supported by Princeton.
Yeah.
For the server. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very good they did that. I mean, it's obvious for them to do it. I mean, it speaks well of Princeton that the website is there. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other questions?
Yeah.
No.
Not so far. Maybe we should move to Greaves for a little bit. I don't know where you, Sue, heard about Bill Greaves for the first time, but there was a screening of his film. I don't know how many people will know the title of the film, Symbio Psychotaxiplasm Take 1, at the Flaherty Film Festival in, I think, maybe 92. I can't remember what year it was.
Something like that, yeah.
But we were so blown away that it was this incredible film that we had never heard of and didn't know what the title meant. And this was an African-American experimental filmmaker. Where did he come from? I worked with Jacqueline Stewart actually, I have to say, watching Jacqueline Stewart become a star was one of the most fun parts of doing the book we did, because she's now the head of the Museum of Motion Pictures in LA.
Oh, amazing.
You know, and wonderful on Turner Classic Movies, Silent Sunday Nights. At any rate, were you there when
I was there? Yeah, I was, along with everybody else, walking out of the theater going, what did I just see? And thank God I just saw it. Yeah. No, totally amazing. So we had that experience, and then Symbio was around, and there were times that, well, I started showing it to my students. I had a show in a gallery, microscope gallery in Bushwick, and about 10 years ago, and I decided to do a few screenings, and I showed it there. So it's been really fantastic for me over the years to show it to people whose minds are all blown. And sometimes they really hate it, but that's okay. But a lot of times, it's amazing. So I didn't really know any of his other work. I mean, I certainly learned a little more about him through your book, like the interview that you did with him. I had a sense of the older book, your critical cinema or in screenwritings. So I had a sense of this incredible range of his work, and that Symbio was was anomalous. But I didn't really see. Maybe I saw the Ida B. Wells film, but it's not like I saw a lot of those other films because they really weren't available. And I didn't think to pursue them, let's say, to show to my classes, because I was showing them Symbio. And but we did bring him to Princeton. I got him. He came to show Symbio 2. We had a secret world premiere because it was supposed to go to Berlin, but he agreed to come to Princeton and show it first. And so that was really wonderful. And that was the last time I saw him. And that was in about, I don't know, like whenever the film was finished, 2010 or something, right? And then I knew he was ailing, and I was sort of in touch with Louise, his wife. And then after he passed about 2 years ago, so he passed in 16 or 14, but there was a different artist who taught at Princeton, did a symposium about Greaves, a really wonderful 2-day symposium. And I couldn't attend, except for at the very end. I was there and I was talking to Louise, and I said I wanted Princeton to buy prints of, or copies of more of his films. And she said that would be great. And I looked at the website and I said, Louise, you're only offering VHS tapes. And she said, I know, we have to update the website. I just haven't had the time. And I said, okay. So I went home and thought about it. And really, the old website, it was such a dinosaur. And I thought about it, and I talked with Surratt, the guy at Princeton, and a couple of other people, and asked what I could do to update it. And they said nothing. It wouldn't even work on anyone's smartphone. So it was about starting from scratch. And so this was in February of 2020. So COVID was starting. And I thought, that's it. I'm just going to make a whole new thing. So basically for the next, 8 or 9 months, I worked pretty closely with Louise. I mean, sort of, she lives uptown, so we'd be on the phone and online and stuff, to build this enormous website. And so we agreed on he made 77 films. So she agreed, she picked the 18 films to feature on the website. And so then it was about me starting to get, information about them, and, all the stuff you would have on a page about film, quotes from other people about the films. And also to try to work out how to make the films accessible, because they really, like Greaves, Bill and Louise, and she was very involved in all the, work of his films. They really geared themselves towards the academic market. It was really about, scholarship, whatever, university courses about Black history and all of that. And So they didn't really have anything available, you know, as simple DVDs or even now streaming. And so then the problem was that all of his work that was left, you know, the literally 300 boxes of film materials and everything else was given to the Schomburg Library, which is up in Harlem, you know, the repository of all things great African American. And so they got all of his stuff, and then it was COVID. So they couldn't go and get anything out for me. So I had to sort of patch together the very best I could of the existing, you know, DVDs and whatever, so that we could make a page where people could go onto Vimeo, you know, and watch the films for $2.99 or whatever. The good news is that Criterion is working things out with Louise, and I think they're going to do a big box set of his stuff. It's still in progress, but I think that's going to happen. And then, so I did all of that, and I had been seeing, you know, various things about him written here and there. And then your book, your fantastic book about him, had this massive bibliography put together by, what's her name?
Oh, I have to look it up.
Okay. Oh, anyway, put together by this woman. And I went through it and realized that that was my source to find things. And so then I went, because I'm an academic, I could go into, you know, those portals that academics can get to find PDFs of articles and obscure newspapers and whatever. And I put together a comprehensive, a page called Reviews that has every single thing, as far as I know, that's ever been written about any of his films. Okay, because of your bibliography. And then I called up Louise.
Aurora Spears, by the way, is her name.
What?
Spears.
Aurora Spears. Exactly. All right. And then I called up Louise and I said, Louise, I'm so excited. I've been doing it. It took like 2 months to do this, right? Because there are hundreds of things. And also all the videos. He was, you know, interviewed a lot. So there are all these, you know, YouTube videos, whatever, with him that are very interesting. And I called her up and I said, Louise, I'm so excited. I finished the review section. Look at it. And she looks at it and she says, you know, Sue, I don't really think we should have that up. Maybe we should just have a few things up. And I was like, thank God we were on the phone so she didn't see my face. And I said, why? And she told me why. And, you know, she said, well, you know, I think people will be interested and they will, you know, they can find these things themselves. And I thought, here we go. And I said, you know what, Louise, that's true if you're working with the academic market. But if there's a kid in Cleveland or in Mogadishu who wants to read one of these articles or watch a video, they can watch the videos. They can't get those articles, you know? And so this is making his work and the writing about his work available to everybody. And then she was persuaded. So it's all there. But yeah.
I should mention, for those folks who don't know Bill Greaves's work, it's an amazing story. He's one of the, I mean, he's an incredibly multi-talented person who grows up in the late 20s, in the 30s. He can't get any training to make films in the United States, so he emigrates to Canada, makes many films up there. And in a certain sense, his whole body of work, which Sue mentioned, 70 plus films, is another kind of lost cinema. I mean, it has in common the same problem of the women editors being, and editors in general, being invisible. Greaves's work for a long time was invisible, and it's quite bizarre that we all discovered it because Symbio was found in a cardboard box in a closet when someone was doing a retrospective of his work. But all those films were aimed at the educational market, and we all hate educational films theoretically. And so that's a whole nother lost cinema that we don't know which are the great educational films and which are the mediocre. You know what I mean? There's a world there that he got lost in because he was so dedicated to trying to educate both Blacks and whites in America about the true history of Africa and of African America, that he didn't work on, you know, producing his own name. You know, it's not what he did. So
you know, another like a coincidence, unexpected coincidence, was when I started working on it. Uh, Eric, oh my God, Eric Gardner had been killed. And am I saying his name wrong? I'm a little exhausted. Is that his?
Yeah.
And so all like things were breaking out all over the country. And during the, the spring and summer, as it really heated up, and there was all kinds of stuff going on in, New York. And there was just such an intense feeling in this country about how the legacy of the civil rights movement is that it's still really, really terrible. Here we are, how many years later, and here's this stuff still happening. And somehow working on the site made me think, well, Bill's work spoke to all of those issues so brilliantly and has not been seen enough. And so if this site exists, then people will have access to it. And I feel like he should have always been part of this conversation about, the history of American racism. And he was very much so. He was like a leading thinker about it all. But since the work wasn't, also he was making it in the days before streaming, so it was more difficult. So I just felt glad that the site was going to make his work out because of what was going on around me. Yeah.
We should mention that tomorrow night, one of Greaves's underseen films, Nation Time Gary,
which is a great,
is being shown actually in FLEF. So
good.
Yeah, one of the things that Greaves was important for is that he just happened to be at the right place at the right time. He made himself be at the right place at the right time. He did the first film on the Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier fight. He did the only film on Nation Time Gary and that incredible gathering of African Americans.
Amazing, yeah. Maya, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so I wanted to know how important you think it is for people to have access to these resources. I remember you talking about the Stromberg Center, and I was a part of one of their programs, the Teen Curators programs, and that was the first time I got to really go into an archive and like find these like documents and learn about the cinematic history, specifically about African Americans. And like we talked about a lot of people that I didn't even know of, and it was just like in this certain time, like in a specific center for African American culture. That's when I first learned about it, but I was in high school at the time. And I know you were talking about like how in institutions, like I guess at like a college, we have specific resources to books here, but it's not accessible to everyone. So I'm also just wondering at like what age, like, do you think people should have access and start learning about these different sites that you're talking about?
At what age? I don't think of it as being something that should be age specific. I think it's more about sort of where you are. Like if you're in a high school and your teacher can get through to, let's say, in Indiana, there's the Black Film Archive, and the teacher can kind of arrange for things, for you to see them, then that could happen. Or I don't know. It's sort of a broad question, and it seems to me that everybody should have access to everything. But institutions do want to protect their stuff. Like if they have, the only film copy of the film, they're not necessarily going to let somebody see it. But they should be making it, they should be doing transfer and making it available to everybody. So, but Scott, you might have some thoughts on that.
Well, just the thought, one of the things that's relevant in the Greaves case in particular is Bill saved everything. But that also meant that when the Schomburg got this material, it's a gigantic trove of material. And it'll take, God knows how long it's going to be before people can work through it.
Right.
And then make it available beyond somebody who can visit the archive. Everybody has this struggle of, okay, you put your stuff in an archive, it's in a box. When does it get onto a shelf? Right. That's a second struggle. And it was particularly big for Bill because he had a whole floor of a giant building full of the stuff he saved, which should have been saved. But until it'll be a while before we and Maya can get our hands on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And you also have the issue with, I mean, he was so productive. So I think also, you know, he'd finish one film and he'd go on to the next one. It's not like there were years between. So the stuff was really piling up. You know, if you're really excited about the next project, you're not going to think, oh, I'll wait. First, I'll organize all of this, you know, and then I'll go on to the next thing. And so I think his productivity also made it so that now the Schomburg is faced with this enormous task. And you also have film where, you know, film prints weigh a ton, and sometimes like Bill would recut things. So you've got version 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, you know, which one are you going to print? Which one are you going to remaster? And I don't envy the people who have to put it together. It'll be fascinating. I mean, the stuff they find, it's going to be fantastic, but it is just an incredible job.
Sue,
So I would say at least there's like on the website, there are the 18 films, and there is at least all the written material. I don't think they're going to find anything else that's ever been written about him beyond this, you know, hundreds of articles that you guys found and that are now on the website. So at least in terms of scholarly research, text research, that is all available.
So I want to come back to edited by for maybe one last question about it. Are you tracking how many people visit the website? How much is it being used? Can you get a sense of that?
You know what? The Surratt at Princeton said, oh, you know, you should go to Google Analytics and see, or WordPress, whatever it is. And on the first week he showed me, and there were like a lot of people. I said, that's so nice. He said, yeah, you should check it every week. And I never do. You know, I just hope that people are seeing it. I'm too busy to like track it. Somebody else could track it if they want. And all I know is that I get, you know, emails from, let's say, people who teach, who say, wow, God, I just discovered this site, you know, I'm going to use it in my class. Or in the case of Sarah, you know, she just discovered it. And, you know, editors who find it and then write me and say, oh, you know, can you add me to it? So I feel like it's getting out there a lot. And also everybody on the website, if you look up, if you Google anybody, they're on the first page of Google now. The website with of them is first page. And before I started this, the only people who came up on the first page were Thelma Schoonmaker and Dee Dee Allen, and maybe Verna Fields. And now, like, you know, the Iranian editor, the Egyptian editor, the Mexican editor, the Indian editor, everybody, they all end up on the first page. So I think it you know, it makes it more available.
Yeah. Any questions from beyond?
Oh, there's one. Chelsea.
Hi. So I will say I'm not totally sure this is really a question. It's more of a thank you. I came a little bit late because I was in an advising meeting, but just so wonderful to hear about the work you're doing. And what I love is that both of these websites are sort of, you know, working in this mode to kind of bring to light these invisible and overlooked collaborative artists. And I don't know, I guess that really like struck me as kind of the important work that like websites specifically can do, and thinking about kind of the other strand here of accessibility when you were talking about, you know, there's these boxes in the archive, right? And who can access those. And so the way that your sites and these projects are creating these public facing elements of them. I guess mostly I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this break in my day to think about these great things. And also to remind me to use your women editors site in my next class. We've already done editing this semester, but yeah, I just mostly just wanted to say thank you because I am going to have to run out. And are you going to do, it's like, what's your next project, Sue?
I actually 2 days ago had an opening of a show in Princeton in this huge space in the art building of 112 photographs. It's called Without Itinerary, 4 months in West Africa, because when I was 21 years old, I traveled by myself down from Algiers through the desert and across through West Africa. And I've been working on a book about it for about 5 years. And then I thought, well, why don't I just put the photographs up for people to see, you know, if the book isn't going to get published or whatever. And so it was a little bit insane to have that many photographs, but it was really nice. The opening was really nice. And I've also been working on a film for 3 or 4 years. It would be done if I wasn't doing the photo show, because I had already done my mix and I was going to do the color correction, and then I had to do all the work for the photo show. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow.
So what's that new film about? Can I ask?
It's sort of about trying to be more in the present moment. And that's the most I can say.
Okay.
It's a little like, oof. Somebody else had a question. Oh, Rachel had a question.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm just curious if any of your own filmmaking work had influenced the way you set up the website, or conceptualized the website in making this huge collection of work.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of yet, no, mostly, but kind of yes. I mean, obviously, one of the things about a film or a website is the structure. So if you make a film, you have to make sure that it makes sense. You know, it flows in a way that, you know, makes sense, is clear. And I think I applied the same thinking to the website. I am so sick of going to websites and having all the pop-ups everywhere. You know, I just feel like I just want to read whatever is on this page now. And if I want to go somewhere later, I'll go there, but just don't do all that to me, right? So I was super strict about that with the editor's website. And navigation, you know, that's why I made a table of contents, because you don't want, you know, 17 things in the top menu. So yeah, you've got like, you know, home, table of contents, main, women, like, you know, the appendix. But then you have a table of contents, which gives you links to all the other parts of it, the poster gallery, the compilation film, all of that. Because I also thought, why can't people just exist in this space comfortably and clearly? Because also, if you're making something with so much information in it, you know, somebody reads the homepage and it says website of about 206 editors, and they might think, just shoot me. Like, I'm, you know, how could I possibly spend the time going through all of these people? So you kind of want to give them some way of entering it that isn't overwhelming. Yeah, so I don't know how much that has to do with my filmmaking. I think it has more to do with the fact that before I started teaching, so when I was, let's say, in my 20s and early 30s, I earned my living doing magazine and book production. And I was also a member of the Heresies Collective, which was a feminist art magazine. And I did, like, I was partly on the editorial board, but I also did production work. You know, I pasted up the issues and stuff. And so I think my way of thinking about the website has more to do with the printed word, the book, the sense of how you enter a book, rather than a film.
I would say there's an element that Rachel's question tags with me. The last feature film you made before the website was Gut Renovation. And to do Gut Renovation, you compiled, I mean, that took a very long time, because you tracked the gentrification of Williamsburg building by building and accumulated this kind of information into, and it's like a personal delivery of that information, but it's really, I mean, I see it as a step from earlier work into edited by, in the sense that the process is very similar. It's a long-term look for this, look for that, what's next. So for me, structurally, and your work has also always been about accumulating various
Right,
pieces and putting them together.
right,
So,
right. True, true.
so for me, it's not a surprise. I mean, there's a kind of, in fact, that's what I was mentioning early on. I think for me, gut renovation helped me understand where editing by came from. So.
Uh-huh. I had
anyway.
not thought of that. I am going to let you guys, I want to find a link. I'm sorry. I want to find a link because my website, my distributor's website set up a brand new page that's really great because I cannot find it. Okay. They set up a brand new page that makes it super easy to find my films directly streaming, because otherwise their website is a little complicated. There's a page, if one of the support people want to look, it's just called The Films of Su Friedrich. That's somehow within the Outcast website. So does that go directly to that page that's just, anyway. Go on. Sorry, Scott.
Oh, it's fine. Anything else from out there in the broader world? Anybody wants to cue in? I think we're getting toward the end of our time, so. Maybe
What
we're
I
done.
love is I just want to, I went to do a gig recently. And so when it's going to be backwards. Oh no, is it right side up to you? Yeah.
You can read it.
So when I first did it, I made this card to put around it, theaters here and stuff. And on the back, there's a list of questions.
Oh.
And the first one is, who edited The Wizard of Oz? Should I read them? Who
Yeah.
are the 3 women who edited 19 Godard films? Somebody raise your hand if you can answer any of these, not if you've looked at the website. Who has won the most best editing Oscars? How many Mexican films did Gloria Schumann edit? Which French editor worked with all the leading directors from West Africa? During her 40-year career, who edited all of Cecil B. DeMille's films? Who edited the first 3 Star Wars films? And who cut 2 more of them? Who edited most of Kieslowski's early documentaries? What Hong Kong-born editor cut 10 films for Eric Rohmer? Have you read Eisenstein's essay about the editor of Alexander Nevsky? Which Black woman editor cut the 400 Blows? What Indian woman is an editor, filmmaker, and director of a major film festival? Who made you binge watch Breaking Bad and Orange is the New Black? And yeah, who did edit The Wizard of Oz? So sometimes when I'm at a thing, I say, okay, if anybody can answer any of these, I'll pay you $1,000. Nobody can. Somebody might say like, oh, Star Wars, it must be George Lucas's wife, right? That's as far as anybody gets. So somehow putting this together, I love, because it just gives you a sense of, wow, how much we didn't know and how much we can know, like looking at the site. Yeah.
Annie.
Yeah, Sue, now that you've opened this Pandora's box, and it is a website, which means you could add to it, I guess. Are things coming in? Are people making suggestions? Do you feel like you're, of course, one is always able to find, oh, you didn't put such and such. I was looking for Chris Hagedis's name, who I think edited the Maisels films.
I have a whole thing. Well,
I'm sure you have a list of next. Lenny Riefenstahl. Politically.
She's in there. She's in
there.
Oh,
is she? Okay.
She's in the filmmakers who sometimes edit. She's not in the main. Oh, no, she is in the mains. No, she's in the mains. I have a huge thing. Okay, I have a huge thing about the Maisels, because they're like the 5 main editors of the Maisels films. And everybody just says it's the Maisels brothers. But the women, they weren't just the editors, they were also, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, they're getting their due now. And I spoke at great length with one of them. And so there's that. And there's also Jean Rouch. 17 different women edited his work. So there are a couple of places where it's not just about one person, but it's, a group. So, yeah.
Thanks.
But Lenny Riefenstahl is definitely in there. But did you have more of a question or, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I mean, I just, again, when is the work ever finished, especially if it's a
Right.
web project, it could just go on and on.
Well, exactly. So, if I get an email tomorrow from somebody saying, whatever, then I'll say, great, I'll add you to Appendix D. And if I get somebody telling me that, God knows, name a famous director, and that person has edited, 30 of his films, then they would be like a main person. So I just have to kind of choose, and also just in terms of my time, but yeah, it can keep going. Yeah.
It could be indefinitely.
Yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
And Maya, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Have you been, because I know you're talking about the Schomburg Center, have you been to the Maisels Documentary Center in Harlem as well?
Yeah, but a couple of years back, I can't remember what I went to see a film, and but it's now, so pre-COVID.
Okay, I was just curious about it because I'm in the program right now, but it's remote because I'm in Ithaca, New York, and it's in Harlem, and I'm from Harlem, so like I just learned. I don't know how I just found out about it recently. I didn't know it was there. I was just curious to know, like, I guess anything about because I'm still learning about the Maisels brothers. Like I didn't have a lot of info going into the program. I just knew that it was a documentary program, which I'm interested in. So I just had any input like on the filmmakers as itself.
I would say go to the website and read my section about them, which is a little biased, right? Because I'm trying to like put forward what the women were doing. But they were, fantastic filmmakers. And beyond that, I mean, I went to one or two screenings there, but it's not like I know very much about the program. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. It's okay. Thank you.
Sure. Stephanie.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for coming to talk today. I really enjoyed this talk. I just had a question. After doing all of this work in Edited By, do you have any advice for filmmakers or specifically editors, women filmmakers, if from what you learned and discovered in doing all this work?
What kind of, like, how to get a job? What do you mean?
Just like any advice, yeah, for like younger, like woman editors just trying to, work in the industry.
I don't see her now. I guess the woman, Sarah, she might have more advice because like, I don't work in the biz, right? So it's hard for me to say. I think it's usually just about hustling your butt, just reaching out, trying to make as many contacts as you can and taking, assistant editor jobs, even if they're really, it's grunt labor, whatever, but just, keep going. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't know where Sarah is, but wouldn't you say that? I would say that's true of any part of filmmaking. It's just really hard and you just have to keep going. Patience and fortitude. So, yeah.
As I'm listening to this conversation and being part of it, if those of you who are academics may relate to this, when pre-COVID, when I used to be able to go to film when everybody got together, Society for Cinema Media Studies conferences, I'd walk into the book room where all the publishers are, and I'd always get totally depressed because it's like, who can keep up with all this stuff? It's like overwhelming. How many film books do we really need? And I have to say that, I mean, I've done a number of books, so I'm a contributor to that issue, but to find this website with all this information that's so easy to access was like life-changing for me. I don't know whether I'll do another book. Maybe I need to try to work in other ways, but I think the amount of information that's available so easily, online,
right.
It's remarkable.
Well, I share your love of books. And when you say you've contributed, I'd say, yeah, you've written like 23 books. So I'd say you've contributed to the pile of books, but they're fantastic. But I also think it is a problem with the ever multiplying, mountains of books. And I love books and I just a book was just published about me, which made me very happy. But I do think there's something to be said for the accessibility and also the flexibility, because, you know, you write a book and you think, I can't believe I didn't put in a chapter about such and such. How did I forget that filmmaker? You know, whatever it is, or a publisher who can't afford to put images in the book,
Right.
on a website. Hey, no limit, right? So, so it's pretty great. But thank you. I'm glad it's been so helpful to you.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, folks, I think we're about at the end of our time, but I just wondering if you had any final thoughts, the two of you, to just, you know, button this up. And in a moment, our wonderful helpers are going to put a PDF file into the chat, which has all kinds of things, like all the links that everyone has mentioned. So make sure you download that before, you know, before you go.
Well, I would just say, if sometime in the next week, if you haven't done this, you should go to the Edited By website and just look at the companion film. It's a blast. It's a blast.
I would say something more to Stephanie, because I didn't mean to be kind of glib, but I do think that it has always been really hard to be a woman in the industry. And I'm using that really broadly because I started out as an experimental filmmaker and it was as sexist and whatever as Hollywood, right? So across the board, it has always been really bad. And when you consider how there are so many more women making documentaries than narratives, because women can't get into the directing positions, but they can documentaries, and still there's so much, you know, so I do think it's really hard, but I think you always have to approach it with a kind of, you know, aggressive attitude. You have to think, right, you're going to try to not let me put my foot in this room, and I'm going to make sure I can put my foot in this room. And, you know, it's sort of mistrust before they are trustworthy, right? Always assume the worst, which maybe is terrible advice, but you just have to be, you know, play offense all the time. And also just like work with other women who are going to be supportive of you, you know, and obviously now there are going to be men who are supportive also, but be very aware of, you know, finding women also to be supportive, and be aware of the women who are not supportive, because that also happens. So yeah, but just hang in there.
Well, thank you, Sue and Scott, so much for this great talk. Now I invite everyone to go to gallery view and unmute yourself, even put on your cameras if you'd like. And I would just love to send these two off with a round of applause and appreciation for your hard work. Fantastic website, fantastic trailer. Really enjoyed having you here. Everybody download that PDF so that you can capture those wonderful files. And hopefully we will see you soon at another FLEF event.
Bye.